Hey, everybody, welcome back. Today I'm sitting down with someone who genuinely thinks differently than most people in business. David Goldsmith has solved problems in 3 hours that companies spent 2 years on, reduced factory operations from 463 to 108 steps in a single day, and is now leading a 1.6 trillion 40-year project to establish infrastructure on the moon. But he's not here to sell you on space travel or moon mining. In fact, he's probably tell you why David's worked with C-suites, Ferrari, WorPro, and dozens of other global companies. He's taught executive strategy at NYU for 12 years, authored the best-selling book Paid to Think, and has delivered 3 TED Talks. But I could go on. David, I'm really excited to be with you here, and I know this is going to be an awesome episode. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we have a tradition here. We typically start with some lightning round questions. And one of mine is, how, as a human, did you make your first dollar?
How as a human did I make my first dollar? I'm traveling back in time. I don't think I was writing on a scroll. Let me think. It might have been, there could be a few things, but one of them was I was a waiter at a cheerleading camp. So there were 250 girls and about 8 guys. And they were cheerleaders, and we had to serve them food. So we were waiters in a large cafeteria room. We brought the food out, and I think I can go back further. It was shoveling snow.
Okay.
And I went up to somebody, and they said, "How much?" And I said, $3. And I remember because my father came after 5 hours and had to turn on the car lights because it became dark, and I refused to leave because I had made a commitment. My parents were extremely angry at this family because they took advantage of me. But
Yeah,
I
of
finished
course.
it. I finished.
That's
I
great.
made a commitment, $3, that's what you get. And I shoveled the snow.
I have a similar, when I was in high school, I needed enough money to buy a car, and I'd done some airbrushing when my dad's friends had taught me how to do body work, just very small scale. I think we did like a motorcycle, a gas tank together. And so I thought, shoot, I can do body work. And so then another friend or association of my dad's was redoing a Ford Bronco. And I said, I'll do the interior paint for a couple $100 if you'll cover the expenses or whatever. And you can't wet sand when it's 20 degrees outside is what I learned. I had a particular deadline, and it's also really hard to control drips with a spray can rather than an airbrush. So I had one of those, hey, I think I've made a mistake kind of conversations, requesting too little for a job that's a little bit bigger than my skill set.
You were smart enough to know that. I was just a tiny boy wanting to make some money. So I went down the street and knocked on someone's door, and they said, sure. But I was there. I think I probably, for those $3, I probably worked about 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
And we'd probably gotten a 1.5 foot of snow, and I was a tiny kid. So it was a lot of work, but I got it done.
What common business assumption drives you?
Oh my God, the list is endless. There's so many assumptions that happen. I have a whole list of them, and in Paid to Think, you can see that there are a variety of them, but I'll tell you one that I just wrote about a few minutes ago because I've heard it so many times. There are phrases, tons of it, but one of them is, things happen for a reason, and sometimes things just happen. Mathematically, they cannot live in the same universe.
Right.
If you say things just happen, then you believe in randomness, that the world allows choice and decisions and how we got here and what happens. Hey, that just happens. But when you say things happen for a reason, you could take it on a micro scale, and it doesn't make sense because let's say a party, things happen for a reason. That meant that every single thing that happened, the buying of the place, the rental of the place, the invitations that went out, but you also have to include the machinery, the development of the concept of the knife. You have to go back to the world colliding via with and creating the moon. You have to go back to the Big Bang Theory. You have to go back every single thing in the universe. I don't even know the language for it, would have to have converged on that moment for things to happen for a reason. It doesn't make any sense. Someone say, things happen for a reason. Really? So that's why. But tomorrow you use the other one. And
Yeah.
change now. It's to fit the modality. And I think it's because humans have a challenge being able to put themselves in a space, sometimes for accountability, and others because the lack of knowledge. So I can't answer that question. So therefore, I default to things happen or sometimes things just happen. But if you really looked at it, it's much more complex. So that's one. I could probably, if I took out my list, I could pull up a list. There's 200 of them.
Yeah, and that goes straight to some sort of religious debate. I had a really great biology teacher in college, and what I loved about him was that he outlined, I think he did it just 'cause he did it out of some pre-learned incident, but he put like creationism on one side and a evolutionary scientist on the other, and he established the common ground between the two, which I really appreciated. So things like, if you're a creationist, you have to believe that things were built with the appearance of age, that they were created with the appearance of age. If you're evolutionist, you take that a different way. So I really appreciated him doing that. As a Christian, I loved that because now we could just play science together. We didn't have to worry about or split hairs when somebody talked about billions of years. It's okay to me. Like, I don't have to enter in some kind of theological debate because I just understand my fundamentals of creationism versus their fundamentals of science.
But you just did exactly that. So let me give you a very quick window, then give you another quick window. 13.8 billion years ago, if the Big Bang Theory actually holds up, we don't know. No one was there to be able to prove it, and we don't have any evidence that it really happened that way. But let's assume 9 billion years later, after thousands of galaxies have been built and strewn around the world, and we all started from energy, and we're all energy. 4.5 billion years ago, the Earth was formed. In that trajectory, at one point, what we call a living cell formed, something that was structurally, but we don't know where, how. We wouldn't have even noticed it if it happened, but it was energy. It didn't sleep, it didn't talk, it didn't have a language, it didn't communicate, it didn't feel, it didn't do anything, but we still call it living. That then trajectory through that whole timeline gets to the point where we are today, and we put humans at the center of the universe. We are 0.002% of just the Earth's living timeline, let alone the billions of years of the whole world. So that challenge, religion becomes a challenge. However, let's jump to the other side. I was in South Africa. I had a company there. I was in South Africa doing hang gliding, and it was very bad weather, extremely bad weather. And the people didn't want us to go up and fly. And at one point, I fell asleep. My wife was nervous as can be. This guy walks out. He gets on a hang glider or a paraglider, and he goes up, comes back down, and the guy walks off. And my wife, they say, "You can go." And my wife said, "Who's taking him?" I'm asleep. The guy just went by. She said, "Good, because that guy believes he can handle it." She just could tell by his walk. I didn't know any of this. I get on the hang glider, we go up, and I'm telling him I've got 27 hours in a Warrior plane, flying. And while I'm working on things, he says, "Oh, so you could fly?" And he lets go. Just lets go. And I have to now hold it. And while we're flying, I ask him a question. And I said, "How old is that below us as I'm going?" And he says, "For you, hundreds of thousands of years. For me, 5 days," or whatever. He threw out a number that 100 years. And those numbers are off. But it was so contradictory to anything I'd ever thought about. That had to have taken a long time. Him, it was like a millisecond in life. I said to myself, this guy believes he's up here because God's holding him up. I am not going to wrestle with his beliefs while I'm in the air. So my point is, what I just did with you, is I had to articulate a different message to make sure we can stay coherent.
Sure.
It's not bad, it's not good, but we learn to be able to have a language between us that agrees where we disagree, or I'm not saying it was disagreeing, it's a challenging position to be in. And we didn't die. That's a good point.
Yeah, that is good. So a lot of your work around that interconnectedness, like, I'm skipping the lightning round here because with you, there won't be any lightning round.
I give you a single phrase if you want it, but
Yeah, you're known for seeing interconnections others miss. And this is a learnable skill. Do you think this is a learnable skill, or are you just wired differently?
I think there's a combination of things and that play into that skill set. There's multiple layers that I think might help you. The first one is solo. We do things solo. They're by themselves. They sit by themselves. A cell sits by themselves. A creature sits by themselves. A business sits by themselves. But we don't have much of that in our lives. There's something happening. So we have the interconnectedness of everything. That is the connections that you see. You go to a LinkedIn page and I'm connected. There's the entanglement, which is another layer. Think of a woman's braided hair. What I do and you do are intertwined. Then there's the infused. The best way I think of it, is a fish tank. Everything there is infused. You change the pH, it infects everything. You change one of the species in there, you change everything. We live in more an infused, but there's another layer we don't talk about as much. We've lost sense of that. Is Syntara. Syntara is the systems and structure that bring us together, the infrastructure. And then there's the Centara, which we've lost some of that. That's that humanistic side, that understanding, that not just compassion. It's the type of thing that my wife could walk into this room right now and I could look at her and she could say nothing. And I say, what's wrong? Like, how do I know that something's wrong? It's because you can sense things. And I bet you, Benjamin, in your case, you probably have felt something went wrong with somebody someplace in the world. And you said, I got to call them. That's the centaur. And we've lost some of that in our world. So can it be learned? Yes, if you're paying attention to the fact that it exists all around us. But then you have to start asking a completely different set of questions. When someone says to you, how is marketing going? You don't say or answer, or how's the platform going or working, or how's that tech being applied? You ask a different question. You say, what through the ecosystem might not be working that I'm not paying attention to? And it could have been, I'm going to use a very simple scenario. I was securing a project at one of the companies I owned, and I won it. And I said, can I ask, how did I win it over some amazing competition? And the guy said, you put our logo at the top. It meant you cared more. No one's going to say that if you don't ask that question. And when they give you an answer, you have to dig deeper. So I now know, if you're going for a contract, put the freaking logo of the client on the top. I'll give you another one, and this is more consultative. I've owned all different businesses in different categories. I got a call from a client, a prospect, to speak at an event and work with a company, and I was skiing up in Vermont. And we get on the call. I say, are you the person who can make the decisions? It's a typical sales question. And he said, yes, there's only one person I have talked to a little bit. And I said, but I won't give you a quote. And he said, you've got the top people in the industry. You were referred to us, the top in this project. We want you on this. And I said, that's okay, but I have to talk to the economic buyer, the person in charge. And he said, but I am. I said, that's okay. You get back to me. But a week or two later, somehow I got a text. They're looking to make a decision. So I called him. I said, I hear you're looking to make a decision. He said, yes. What we're trying to do, what we don't want to look bad to the people like you. And I said, stop. You're a several $100 million business. We don't matter. You don't have to look good to us. Stop for a moment, make a decision, tell everybody you need another week or two, because it's more important you make a better decision than it is you pick someone like us. We're insignificant. I get a call back within 20 minutes. John wants to meet with you. Any place, anytime. I went to visit John, huge room, 30 seats in their boardroom. They make me sit for a half hour. I had to be on time, but they had to come in a half hour later. John sits down. And long story short of it is, the reason I got the job is I was the only one who got to him.
Right.
That was the real reason I got the job, not because of all the things in the proposal and the pricing. At the end, he said, David, you are 5 times more expensive than the cheapest and double the one that we thought was the top. You were double, and you got it. But here's even another kicker. We walked outside. He walked me to my car, and he opened up his trunk of his car. Now, he runs hundreds of millions of dollars in business, so this is not a small business. And in the back of his car, he's got shoes. He loves shoes, and he changes the shoes out during the day.
Okay.
And then he looks at mine and he says, Crocs, they were a pair of Ferragamo Crocs shoes that are very expensive. You play a part when you're doing certain things. I don't wear them unless I need to. He felt that I played the role particularly well in the way I showed up. I presented. My suits are custom made. My shirts are custom made. It's not for those who know. It's not for those who don't know. It's for those who know. So the logo on the top, the one who got there, you don't learn those things. So the interconnectedness is often hidden, is my point, and you really have to work hard to find it. I don't know if I helped you to see that.
Yeah, I see it. I think,
I devalue
yeah, I was
myself
just wondering how to,
already, but yes.
no, but I'm wondering how to transfer that skill, because that sounds magical.
Can I answer? I can give you.
Please.
As leadership, and we'll take it from that perspective. You have to be the exemplar and ask the questions of them, and then you have to ask them to ask questions, and you help them to ask better questions. And I do that all the time with our team. I did it with you. On our first call, I said, what are you not asking me? I did that, didn't I? What are you
No,
not?
yeah, totally.
That is a skill. If you do that enough, you'll start to learn, or the individuals you work with, they'll start to acknowledge that you're open to new ideas, you're open to exploration, you're not rushing to an answer. And the challenge is, in today's time, we're rushing to an answer. And I tell people it's the best thing to do is feel like you're holding back horses. Ask enough questions, and then you start to see the interconnectednesses of everything.
How can they start seeing these connections? What's the framework? I realize there's probably a set of questions, but is there, I don't know, and maybe I'm being too consumer to ask like for the bullet,
Oh, you know,
a really clear framework. But yeah, how can I help the folks that are hopefully listening, the CEOs, CTOs, COOs, see those connections? And is there an easy to understand framework?
Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate what we just did. You had trouble articulating a question. I said to you, it was great that you were doing it, and I'm here for you. Even that is enough because you are able to move your way through instead of being rejected. It might not seem like a lot, but I'm smiling through it saying, no, that's good. Keep on going.
Yeah.
One of the challenges is how to ask that question. Spend 3 years wondering what those questions are. And a tool was developed. It's called Redefining. It's in Paid to Think, but it's also something I can send you a parable. And there's also a TEDx talk. One of the TEDx's, I don't know if you watched, I did Hong Kong, Dubai, and Luxembourg, but it's the Dubai one. That Dubai piece shows you some of those questions you ask. And there's a series of frameworks that you can actually start to ask better questions, and you'll see the results of them. I'm not going to go into it because it would take too long, but I can give you a parable book and you can link them to the TEDx, and I could potentially try to pull out that part from Pay to Think in a PDF form so that you can share that too, if you mind.
Yeah. Awesome.
I'll give you one insight into it. We were working on this for 3 years. And at one point, I was in a corner, I remember, and someone I was working with at the time says, why did that happen? And I turned to him and said, why doesn't matter? And it shocked him. And I said, at this point, why does it matter? And this expression of 5 whys, ask one question, ask another, and ask another, does not work. It does not work. Specific questions asking for tailoring approaches are necessary. And he was shocked, but when I explained it to him, I said, at this point, it won't get there. So even the impulse reaction about the tools that we have, you have to be willing to say those tools were designed for a different time, a different frame, a different experience. And this tool works. Now, I'm going to share one other thing. If you approach it saying that I already do that, you don't. And I'm going to explain how I know that. The first time I presented it, I did the whole thing to about 15 executives, multi-$100 million companies each. And when I was done, everyone said, I do that. I had been working with them for years. They never did that. So the next group, I said, what we're going to do is you're going to show me how you go through the process of asking questions. Oh my God, I have them down in the basement. I have rolls of them. They're terrible. The solutions, the angles, the frameworks that they use are never worked. Those people were all willing to listen to the answer. The first group did not because they already knew they were amazing.
Interesting.
So I had to ask them a question. Think about it. One, I gave them an answer. And the other one, I said, can you please write out, I'll give you a piece of paper in front of you, your process for strategically thinking. Oh my God. And then I did it for every class at NYU. I taught new product and service development for 12 years also. Every new product and service development class, I did that at the frame of every single one of them because I needed to give them a reference point of how far lost they are and how much any assumptions they baked into everything they do.
Yeah, this isn't totally my story, but one of my friends owns a jujitsu studio. And so they had an older gentleman come by that was directly from the lineage, right? Like one of the foremost experts with the right pedigree to come and be a grand master class for these folks. And so they go to, okay, well, do you know how to do, one of his first questions is, okay, do you know how to do such and such? And I'm not going to tell the story perfectly, but one of the black belts said, no, I already know how to do that. And the grandmaster guy said, okay, thanks, cool, I'm out of here. And he left the whole class. And it was like one of the best lessons that they could have ever learned. If I'm in this place to learn, it's not the time to assume that I already know.
Here's I'm going to call it mommy issues. You just brought something to mind as you shared that. When my first speaking engagement I ever had, that was really official. My partner at the time, we were about 20 years old. My partner agreed to speak for the American Management Association as a keynote for 3 hours. And the day before they called and said, when is he coming? We haven't heard anything. I said, oh, he's not showing. He doesn't care. And I said, what do you need? And they said 3 hours on management. Jeez. So I put things together, stayed up the whole night. I then traveled, drove, got to the place in time. Luckily, it was close enough. And I was the second highest rated speaker in a 10-day conference, which is nice. But what I did, I was so afraid of not doing a good job that I stayed up all night. When I started my speaking career, I didn't have a story. A lot of people, I was a military helicopter pilot. I do relationships.
Sure.
I said I cannot walk into a company and speak or an industry if I don't know about them. So I'd get my client and I'd say, give me the 10 people, length, width, height, and depth. I want to know the biggest, the smallest, of this. And I would ask to do an interview. I'd do 7 at least. And I would do probably between an hour to 2 hour interviews with each one of them, only asking questions and trading notes. And then I would formulate a new presentation. I've done over 2,500 of them. I know what a Class 9 harvester is. I know how helicopters are put together. I know what FOD prevention is. I know how credit unions work. I didn't realize I was building an arsenal of knowledge base. I started to see the interconnectedness and the entanglement and infusion of everything only because a Class 9 harvester is using satellite technology to be able to do, and you could just go on and on. By accident, and I say it's mommy issues, I have a fear of not being enough. I did the research, and for Harley Davidson, I not only did those interviews, I refused to speak if I didn't get my own Harley. I had to get the Harley Davidson. I get a motorcycle license. I didn't feel it was appropriate to stand on stage and never have been on a bike. And so I stood up on stage, and one of my first questions was, 600 people. Who's Harley's number one competitor? You can't guess. Harley's number one competitor is Harley. I won't go into the details, but wow. Continuously learning is not an answer. There's a fire under my butt that I don't want to show up. And I prepared for you.
Yeah,
I have 7 pages of notes of the questions that you sent that were AI generated with your commentary, and we're not even using them. But I still felt more comfortable showing up today, having looked at those questions and said, which direction are we going?
Yeah. So one of the things I do in coaching is this primal question. I have a curriculum that helps walk people through to determine their life purpose. This is something I've invested some time in on. And Mike Forrester has these 7 primal questions. I wouldn't say it's like the deepest work ever, but it's at least when you have some direction around and one of those primal questions is, am I enough? And so his theory is, if that's your primal question, then when you're getting a maybe or a no from the world, then you go into a bit of a scramble, and they range from, am I safe? Am I loved? Am I wanted? Am I enough? Am I successful? And so it's interesting that
Gotta ask, what's your reason? What's your core?
right.
What's yours? You just said
So
I'm asking, what is?
Yeah, no, I'm a Q5. Am I successful?
That's your question.
Yes. And so then the cool thing about it, though, is that your primal question becomes your primal truth and your primal gift. So then you begin to affirm, I am enough. And like a lot of the accomplishments so for me, am I successful? I affirm often, right? Even subconsciously, that I am successful. But then that also becomes my primal gift. Like when I'm involved with people, I make them successful.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Okay, so if that's your primal answer, what's your desired outcome out of that?
I look back, right, at my adventure. I love making people successful. Like I get the most purpose. And this is the primary aim with this work, is how to drive towards your purpose. When you're getting a yes, you feel like you experience life on purpose, versus the opposite would be chaos, right?
No, the opposite of purpose is not chaos. The opposite of purpose is probably a no direction,
Ambiguity.
ambiguity, or a lack of focus or something.
Yeah.
I would not say it's that direction. Yet, to me, that doesn't go far enough for you. See, I think that's a modularity piece of who you are. And if I was to make people successful, if that was the desired outcome, I wouldn't do some of the things that I'm doing. I was interviewed when I was in my 20s or 30s, and the person asked me a question. So I said, I've lived, I've loved, I've learned. If I died tomorrow, I'm okay. Making people successful is like a business thing. It's and I'm not picking on you. I'm saying in my mind, I'm saying, God, there's so much more to you. I've already not known you.
Yeah, yeah. No, and when we do this purpose work, it is just one of the ingredients. So we figure out that primal question, which is a backdrop driver of folks. And then we do Clifton strengths, and we do a bunch of work to try to give some vocabulary and some general guidance. And then the climax of the class, or the body of work, is that you define your own purpose statement. And so your purpose is much larger than just making people successful, to your point.
So what's this? Mike is his name? You said he came up with a framework. How well do you know Mike?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not
The
clear.
guy who invented that model that you were using.
No, I learned this through an organization called Rise Up Kings. It was designed by a guy named Skylar Lewis.
Okay, so do you know Skylar?
Yes,
Okay. Have you changed the model at all for you?
I have, in the sense that I can do it rather than at one big personal development event. I can use it more interpersonally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. So the reason I'm asking the question is through my history, I started the New York State chapter of the the National Speakers Association, built it from 5 people to 1,000 people, the largest chapter in the world. If we weren't part of the United States, we would have been the second largest chapter. And I did interviews, Zig Ziglar, Charlie Jones, Keith, Ferrari, Ajay, Abraham, Brian, Tracy, go through the list of all of them. I did interviews with them, Harvey McKay, there's a ton of them. And there are a lot of challenges when you meet the person who created the model that often don't intersect. And I'm going to give you an example, and then you tell them we can walk through it. Are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Totally.
Do you believe in it?
I'll say yes.
So let me give you history, and then you could tell me if you have that same answer at the end. Maslow wrote a paper. It was not an amazing paper. He wrote a paper, and an American created the triangle. Starting at the bottom, you have to get your needs met, and then work up. And then he started selling it, and he was making a boatload of money. So Maslow, who didn't agree with the triangle, decided he was going to work on it too, and he made some money off of it. But before he died, he wrote a paper that's nondescript, it's very seldom read, that more or less said he didn't agree with it. And what he didn't agree with is that there was no triangle, there was no layers. So I'll ask you a question, then you can tell me if you now agree with it. Have you met poor people who have been absolutely amazing, changed lives, been able to make things happen that were beyond anything you would have expected?
I'm sure.
Yeah. In your religion, there's a guy by the name of Jesus.
Right.
Okay, he didn't have a lot of money. He didn't go up that pyramid. We could use Gandhi in there. Not exactly the nicest guy I've heard in terms historically as a person. We have Nelson Mandela. Could use other names, but you wouldn't know them. But we can just look through history and see many people who were in nurses or in medicine or something that did something that didn't go up that hierarchy needs and still made sense of the world. So the challenge becomes when we get models, we have to ask ourselves, where did it come from? Does it work? And how much research you want to do in it? But you could start asking simple questions. And I said, I know people who never got past the bottom who are amazing. Therefore, the model doesn't work. I've written about it that if you have that belief that you're going to follow other individuals who you think have created at a different time, at a different space, you might be destined to create something new. So my question again to you is, now that you've heard that Maslow himself did not believe in the triangle, that it was done for commercial purposes, and that's how it's gotten there, and that the person, you've said you're very religious, the person you follow did not follow that same triangle. Can you believe in Maslow's hierarchy of needs now?
I agree with you that it's not mutually exclusive. So it's a good way to describe behavior. But do I believe that the only people who are self-actualized? I believe in it in the sense that folks that no longer care or no longer need the lower levels of need. So you could be not very affluent, like Jesus didn't need those things or didn't contemplate his need for those things as a primary aim, meaning he had eliminated those needs through one way or another, through his belief. So we are a function of how we believe about those needs, not necessarily the needs themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think it is, if my primary need, meaning what I care about most, is taking care of myself, or what I need most because of what I believe is my sense of belonging or finding love, then that will position us along the triangle.
I would argue that we've learned more from our failures than we have from our successes, and that we have had really challenging times when we're at the bottom and we become the better person we are. I've had those experiences. I had one company where by the time we were done, it was like $500,000 my wife and I were in debt. And it was someone who would stay at our house when we go on vacation or holiday. And we found that he was stealing from our things in our home while we were trusting him. We gave him an apartment above our facility, our manufacturing facility, and he stole from us. But I learned a lot from that. The challenge, the question that you were talking about learning, and I'm talking not about specifically that. I'm saying questioning those types of structures and saying, does it fall into the framework? So now I'll ask another transitional question to that. Let's go
Sure.
above. You've met very wealthy people. Are they self-actualized because they have the money now? I'm talking to people who inherited it. I'm talking to people who married into it. I'm talking to people who
Yeah,
stole it.
no. I think whether it was Maslow or the guy that jacked it, the self-actualized people are the people who start with nothing and learn by moving up through the levels.
It's not an easy line is my point, and it doesn't
Yeah.
fall that way. And I've worked in over 50 countries around the world, and I'm talking Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Malaysia, South Africa, Botswana, Zambia. I'm talking Estonia. I'm talking France. You go from all the way around different levels of capabilities. And I have found amazing people everywhere. And I've also found people who've had a lot of money. And this is not a true model, but let's say a construct. You make about $5 million, you are in the top of the world,
For
mathematically.
sure.
You can live a very good life wherever you are. You're not going to live flying private jets everywhere, but a good life. You get to about 15 million, about over. There is nothing that you really need that you couldn't have unless you blow it on a business or some adventure that you've got. But I found that people who get over 15, and this is not a condemnation of them, they spend a lot more time protecting what they've got because they don't know who their friends are. They don't know who wants them for their money or their position, or they're dating somebody because they have the money and they sold their business. There's sometimes, not everybody, but I have found people who change because of that. My point is more not that there's an answer, that I'm questioning the interconnectedness of everything. What does that mean? Millions of people follow Maslow, and they think that's how you build an organizational structure, and that's how you get people to survive and thrive. And it fundamentally is based upon a principle that you admire and follow the beliefs of an individual who did not fit into that matrix. Maybe there's a different mechanism. So let's make this very simple. If I was to take a laser beam and point it to the moon, and I was off by a centimeter, what would happen?
You wouldn't hit it.
By a long shot.
Yeah.
If you're making decisions based upon a construct or a model or a theory, insert here, you can become less flexible and the outcomes don't become as powerful. So if I was coaching you, I would say it's a great framework. However, I'm going to guarantee you there's some people that you're coaching. I'm not in the coaching business per se, but the
Sure.
people you're working with, you're missing something that makes them. So I'll give you a very quick example, and then I'll give you one from my personal. Working with this, I lived in Hong Kong for a decade. And one of the companies, the most successful company in a certain category in the ecosystem was there. And this one guy I was working with, because he was having troubles, he had about 400 people he managed and 5 main managers. And I said, look, I'll help take care of this person. It wasn't my job, but I volunteered. And I sat down with him. We started talking. I never gave him homework. If you're in a coaching session, you give someone homework, it now becomes a responsibility instead of an ability for someone to then digest that. That's my belief. So if I talk to you and I say something, I'm not going to give you homework because I'm doing the job well enough. Hopefully you're going to think about it. So I asked him about his coaching. Like, how does he coach he said he coached. And he said, yeah, every month I sit with them for an hour. Every month I spend an hour with them. And I said, that's interesting. And I played this up, but I did it nicely. So that's interesting. So it's 12 hours per year for someone who manages 100 people that you spend coaching. That's an interesting number. And he looks at me and says, you spend more time with me than I spend with my own staff. I said, oh, wow, yeah, if you do the math. And I knew that was the answer. He said, should I spend more time with them? I said, up to you. It's not my skill. If you want to spend it, but I'm not going to give you advice. You now realize something. 3 months later, we added 2 other people to the group. They had heard the story, and we were sitting out on a porch. I had this porch out in Hong Kong, and we were talking out there. And at one point, he says, I got to bring something up. And I said, what is it? And he said, I have been working each week with one of my staff. Each week, I spend time with them. I don't ask them to do anything like you don't. And then we have a group call once or twice a month. And he said, and I feel like I'm doing less work. And I started to laugh. And he says, what? I said, do you want to tell them? And they were also starting to laugh. They said, your team is growing.
Yeah.
Now, the 2 others had started it, and one guy had stopped, and the other one had gone partially. And the guy said, I think I got to get back into this. I never gave him homework, though. I gave him the flexibility of giving somebody time to think, and we need to digest things as humans. We spoke, I don't know, a week ago, a week and a half ago, something like that. Have you thought about our conversation?
Oh, for sure.
We don't always have answers in the moment. So that's how, when I'm working with somebody, depends on the scenario. When I was working in the factory, we went from 463 pieces per hour per day to 808 pieces per hour per day. And with no new equipment for 3,000 employees, revolutionized the shop. I had to move things. There were times, but I still taught along the way. And so I don't know if that helps with you're asking, how do you get people to answer
No, I
the
mean,
question?
a principle of coaching is like noticing things and then asking questions to determine the interconnectedness. And oftentimes those questions can become very powerful. Like, why is it that I do that? Or why do I think, and this is really powerful in relationships, like asking the question rather than making a judgment is extremely powerful to try to get under what is it that I really believe about that particular thing. Because if I can change my worldview, if I can change my beliefs, then I can grow. I can reverse assumptions or things that are driving, like I have this fear that I'm not enough. That is a really good, like many times folks can realize that in coaching, and that can be extremely transformative. Oh, okay. That may be something I want to work on or explore or understand.
All I've said to myself was, that is the power that has enabled me to not feel like I knew everything. It's a fear of not knowing enough, so I do the homework. And I have not found it to be a bad thing, even though it is a bad thing. It makes me stay up all night. It makes me do my homework. It makes me do the things that I shouldn't. Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
When you're working with individuals on your team, be careful that you don't cross the line of sounding like the psychologist trying to, or sociologist trying to find an answer. The real truth of a good individual helping somebody else, again, I don't like the word coaching, is that the individual sees that and feels that you're helping them. And the challenge, I know a lot of coaches, they're there to ask the right question to move them. It's not about the right question. It's being present. It's listening. It's feeling what's going on. And it's not pushing people to places they don't go. I am a sprinter. I do things, I push hard, I get the things done. I need the roofing done. I need this done. I need the model done. I need the plans done. I do it. My wife is day to day. She just bump, 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 bump. She'll do it every day. I can't. It's just not who I am. And so I accept that. And so I don't try to change people into me. I try to find how I can help them. Does that make sense? And if you cross that line, which you might not see, the person you're dealing with feels it. And then it becomes I have my psychology session with my boss. It's coaching, and they'll put on the face, but they're not living the experience.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. You had mentioned a university recruiting example and how it applied to your mining equipment development. That was a really wild connection from college athletics to industrial mining. How do you make those leaps?
Let me give you a construct first, and then I can explain that to you. You've heard the expression, you said, well, some things I don't like. Think outside the box. Do you ever say that to anybody?
I'm allergic to cliches, so I would probably say the same thing in a different way, but I'll say yes, though.
Okay, don't. My suggestion. We don't think outside the box. When you ask someone to think outside the box, it's impossible to think out of the brain, the framework that you have in your head. What you're really saying is go learn something new, experience something new. So now you have new information to create something new because you can't create it without new information. It's just impossibility. So one day I was thinking about that and I said, I don't think outside the box. I think in the box, but I fill my box with everything.
Right.
So what I tend to do is I have a graphic of this and I say think outside. And I remember specifically one example. There's a greeting cards company. 2 months before, a month before, which is too late, they would tell all their staff, their designers, to go out and look at greeting cards, to come back with ideas. But they're looking at last year's models, the ones that went to market, not the new ones that are coming out. But they would come back and do designs and they were rushing last minute. A good designer is constantly thinking about things and learning and experiences outside of their industry, different places to say love and relationships. How do you put that together? And so I'll have this thing about what you want to do is think inside the box. So I test everything that I do. I'm with Edge is his name. He ran all of Asia's KPMG. And I'm sitting at a table and I said, I have this construct that I'm playing with my head. I don't think people think outside the box. I think great innovators think inside the box. And I explained how you bring ideas in, you're constantly learning. And then when something comes to mind, you've got it. You can pull from it. It's there. It's there. And he looks at me and he says, that's exactly how I think. It's a good sign. Then I'm in Silicon Valley. There's a one step in between. I'll skip that one. I'm in Silicon Valley with a guy who has 4 Lear jets. He launched Carbon 3D. He's one of the people who launched Carbon 3D, if you remember that company. And we were at a dinner table. He was 87, and he had his girlfriend with him who was like 82. And we're having this discussion. It's a white table with white paper on it, and I draw the box on it, and he says, I don't like it. And I did the exact inside, outside the box thinking, make sure you're filling your brain with everything. This guy is an engineer. He writes poetry. He's written books. He's a musician. You go down the list of all the things he's done. So he's actually filling his box. And he says, I don't like it. He gets up, says he has to go to the bathroom. He leaves and the girlfriend says, he doesn't like it. It's not good. He doesn't come back for 20 minutes because he knows everybody in Palo Alto. And he sits down and he says, that's exactly how I think. If you want to have experiences where you're changing those dynamics, you have to be filling your box with things. And it should be diverse things. So when I travel, I always take one day before or after because I'm already there. And I don't know if I'll ever be back again. So for example, I've worked in Moscow. I've worked in St. Pete. I don't know if I'm ever going to be back there. Who knows? So if you can learn to fill those gaps, what you start to do is be able to see the interconnectedness because you're not singular dimensionally. And I think when people find something they love, they think, I should be in that genre. That's where it's going to come from. But if you're standing in Kazakhstan, or you're standing at the Great Wall of China, or you're looking at the Leaning Tower of Pisa yourself, or you're bowling with a bunch of Danes in Germany, old guys against the young guys, and you have that experience, that's the moment where you say, now I see the connection. So what I try to help individuals on our team, I don't like the word support. I think it's a terrible word. Would you rather like help or support? I always want help. So I never use the word support. I don't support people. I help them. So I would say, if I want to really help people, I have to learn things that are uncomfortable for me. And while I was in college, my senior year, I took violin. I'm not a musician. I played piano, I played sax, but I was never allowed to play anything I liked. My mom always wanted me to play like concert stuff, and I didn't like it. I learned to play violin because it was the hardest instrument in the world to learn. And I said I needed to put myself in a position where it was so difficult, I had to humble myself. And I've done things like that my whole life, where I just don't know. I just don't know. I have to relearn who I am, what I do, how to do it. And it's not an answer to your question, but it's a direction, because to see interconnectedness, you have to fill your box. You just have to.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense in the way the box analogy is. I'm going to jump to another box analogy.
Sure.
There's this idea of living inside the box, which being inside the box, we start to think of people as tools, right? Rather than as humans. So this happens in parenting, where I think of my kids as an object of performance, right? Or I think of this in the team construct. And then living outside the box is asking, like, okay, what's really going on? And then I can view people as people, first off, not just an object or a tool. And then, okay, so what's really going on? Can I ask a question why this happened? And usually performance is a combination of many things. And so then those things come out, and then you can start to help. You can actually start to support. I like that word.
Help. You want to help, not support. Help. Always help.
Help.
You
Okay.
want to help somebody. Either you're going to help me or you're not. Don't support me, because that just means, yeah, I've given him some support. No, help me.
Yeah, sympathy versus empathy continuum. Yeah, so then you can actually help them with what's actually going on. If you're just like, hey, why aren't you performing? And that you're in the box. And so it's the same box metaphor, but just I've been using that. That's from like Leadership and Deception, a leadership book I read a couple of years ago.
I just heard this today, so it's a good analogy. You don't have to have had cancer to treat cancer as a doctor. You don't have to have led or done certain things to be able to see opportunities or challenges in the ways things are structured. But I would share that when you have a leadership management box or a book or video or whatever, the challenge is you will have to somehow figure out if they've actually done it that way. And if you watch the people who, and I know some of them, they don't do what they say. They've learned the buzzwords. They've picked that up. Our book took 12 years to write, 14 complete revisions, over 50 countries in the book, and over 400 examples. I was there for 72% of those examples, right on the ground. They're my story. I do not say it. I don't want to be in that position of being that way. But I know how it worked and what we did to overcome that. And so it's just a word of caution that there are a lot of models out there. Call the person who wrote it. Just call them or email them and say, did you use this yourself, or did you read about it? And if you did by yourself, can I get on a call, because I want to know how it actually transpired? It's very difficult to look at ourselves. It's very difficult to analyze ourselves, and that's why 12 years to write the books. You're a good person with a lot of heart, and with that, you're trying to find answers. a lot of those answers are already in you. And you're structuring to them, and they could have, I'm going to make it complicated. They could have been in nanotechnology instead of aerospace. They could have been water and sewage compared to agriculture. They might have been working in Dubai, India, Singapore, New Zealand, and Canada, where the entire model of development is different. For example, in South Korea, Denmark, and Australia, somewhat New Zealand, there's a saying, when the shaft raises up, you cut it off, something like that. If you stand out, you're actually doing a bad job. You got to be part of the group. You have to lead very differently there. I worked with Ferrari in New Zealand. I had to be very different in the New Zealand environment, even though we had people from all over the world. When I'm in Italy, I had to work differently in Milano. I had to work differently when I was working with Maersk in Copenhagen. Just completely different models of expectations. More the point is, humans are extremely complex. Here's a different way. When people come to Project Moonhut, we'll toss that in for a moment. We never tell them what to do. What we do is find a way to make what their desired outcomes happen. And here's the message. I built 3 nonprofits, or did work that was fairly significant. In a nonprofit, no one works for free. Everybody works for a fee. But what's the fee?
Satisfying the mission or helping with the mission.
Or getting to know somebody so I can get a better job, or
Yeah.
putting it on my CV, or, oh my God. But if you can get past the economic side with the people you're working with and find out what drives them as who they are, whole different ballgame. The reason I'm doing this is we want to have somebody wants to come work with Project Moonhut, and he made some comments, and I said, okay, what excites you about this? And he went on a bunch of things. 2 calls later, he and his wife want to have a baby, and he had worked for a very large company. He had left, he started his own business. It's not returning what he wants, and they want to have a child. And they've come to a conclusion that if he hadn't gotten by that certain date, he would start looking for a job. The reason he wants a certain job is because of the baby. The reason he left the company is because of his inner self. He didn't feel it was aligned. I would not have found that out if my questions were about income, job opportunities, promotion, where do you want to work? So I tried to get to know somebody. It's so much more work. My wife is like, why? Because no one works for free. Everybody works for a fee. And if I know who you are, I could feel it myself right now. I can meet them where they are.
Right.
Then my
Yeah.
conversation is different. It's deep. Sorry. I'm the person my wife looks over. I'm the one crying at the movie.
Yeah, I love that.
I can meet the person where they are, because now it's no longer about that relationship of economic. It's important. You do have to meet that, but you can change the modality because you're giving something different. And I'll give you an example. There's an individual who wants to come work with us right now, and she's tops, an incredible person. And I asked her how much, and we've known each other, and we can't afford that for what we're looking to do. And I said, this is what I'm looking at. And she said, so I'll be working with you? And I said, yeah. For the organization? And I said, yes. She said, I'd love to do that, and I'll figure out the rest. It wasn't because I offered her money. It's because I met her, not just once, not just twice, but every time, consistently. I'll give you another quick one. Maybe it'll help. I had another person who's involved in a deal that I was involved in. And during the call, she said, I'm not even on the table that they're working on. This person is a dynamic. She is just an incredible person, smart as can be. And I didn't know what she meant. And we went through everything, and I realized she wasn't mentioned in all the work, and she's doing everything. And I got off the phone. My wife was here at the time. She wasn't on camera, but she was here. I got off the phone and I said, can we give her some of ours? I just want to give her some of what we've got coming our way. And I said, we have to do it now, not when we get something else and we fight for it, now. I didn't say it in that way, but my wife knew me. And she said, without a doubt, without a question, yeah, whatever you want to do. That's it. My wife's a really good person, and she's got a heart. So I called up immediately and I said, I want to give you some of what I've got. And she said, no. I said, look, I don't care. You are amazing and you need to have this. But I was consistent because she told me 3 months ago on another project, I did the exact same thing. It didn't matter to me. My wife said, it doesn't matter how much we make and what we don't make. You have to, it was like, David, you're okay. And that person knows me as that person. You work for a fee, and that fee for her is being part of something that feels real, solid, connected, cared about. Contributions are valued. The economics are not what drives her. And so everybody else who's in the part of this, They don't notice that. They don't even see it. Does it help a little bit when you talk
It
to
does.
people? It's harder.
No, it is.
You have to expose yourself.
Yeah,
I mean,
it takes a heavy degree of authenticity and vulnerability, not just as cliches, but as the deep work.
yesterday, we have a new person that was introduced to us for the project. We've had a lot of people. And at one point, he takes down his eyes and says, "Can you see?" He said, "I'm crying." First day meeting him. You want me today? I have to be a part of this project.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Project Moon Hunt, with a 40-year, 1.6 trillion plan to establish what you call a box with a roof and a door on the moon. That's an audacious goal, and I want to hear more about it. But you're on record saying moon mining and asteroid mining are illusions. Those are contradictory. So what's really going on here?
Okay, so let me give you first what our directive is. It's called a directive. I don't like mission and vision. Those are words that people don't even hear anymore. And I realized later that it was the Borg had a directive, if you want to go sci-fi on it.
Yeah.
You're to establish a box with a roof and a door on the moon through the accelerated development of an Earth and moon-based ecosystem. Then leverage those innovations from the paradigm shifting from the endeavor to improve life on Earth for all species. And we are an Earth-focused project leveraging beyond Earth to reshape how we live on this Earth over 40 years. The money doesn't make a difference. Like, you did it twice, 1.6. I'm going, that's like, I barely say it, but it is. I believe the world is fracturing in multiple places, and we can see it. We're having religion, we have economics, we have societal. There's just a lot of fracturing going on. We have more conflicts on planet Earth today than we did in any other time in history if you take out the world wars. World wars, that people put them in, but they were an aggregate conflict. We have individual more conflicts on our Earth, say, in 1943, but then they add in World War II, which was an aggregate combination. So if you did it that way, we have more on this planet today. I'm going to take a jump and then come back. You tossed out moon and asteroid mining. If you're in the beyond Earth ecosystem, and there's a reason I'll say that now, if you want, I can give that to you in a minute. It's not an industry. This is another one I'm putting a note. If you're in the beyond Earth ecosystem or space ecosystem, it's like a secret code. There's a language there. They're there for science research and exploration. And one of the strong premises are two of them. We're going to mine the moon, off Earth everything, and we're going to mine asteroids. And that is the economics of this. A lot falls under that. Now, the challenge is, there's a video on it on YouTube. You can create that link for them. We will not be mining on the moon at any time soon. By the way, we're not on the moon. And we drop, as humans, 100 billion tons of rock every year. 100 billion tons. If you were to take that and do it on the moon, where we measure things in kilos going to the moon, just think about how expensive that would be. But even more so, the infrastructure that we have on Earth. You have heavy equipment. You have to dig down into the ground. You have to pull it up, extract it, a lot of energy. You have to put it through a very complex processing sequence. One plant, a lithium plant, which is like one of 10 plants to make lithium, is $2 billion. $2 billion. All of that would have to be done on the moon. And that's not a copper plant. That's not a deuterium plant. That's just that. We're so far away from that, it's absolutely absurd. But there's even more challenges. The Earth is 8,000 miles wide. We go 4,000 feet deep. And the Earth and the moon are made of the same material. It was hit by Theia, created this debris, formed into the moon. Same material. A little bit of concentration differences. So why go to the moon if we could do it here? But we're not doing it right. We could do it with narrow vein mining equipment, much more precise equipment. Asteroid mining, another whole big game. You probably don't know this, but if I was to try to figure out what's underground with the equipment today, I'd put it on the ground. We might be able to go 10 to 15 feet deep, 3 to 5 meters. That's it. And we barely can see. So you're trying to tell me that we can travel at 60,000 or 50,000 kilometers per hour, buy an asteroid traveling through space and tell you what's inside of it? We have mined asteroids already. They're on Earth. And we mine them, and there is no such thing as a platinum asteroid. There is no such thing as a gold asteroid. It's a combination of a mixture which you have to extract and separate. So besides the complexity, we don't have a single rocket today that can go to the moon. Artemis might be able to go around and come back every 2 years for people. So the whole ecosystem is based on an economics of moon and asteroid mining. There are others, but that's the main premise. The secondary premise is we offer humans, 1 million of them, so that we can save the human species. It's going to be 9.9 billion people, 9999999 billion people left on this planet. I'm about Earth. I want to make this for your children, for my children, for generations to come a different place that people can live within. So the moon and asteroid mining, it's an hour and 10-minute video. You watch the beginning and you'll learn about mining. It'll be valuable for everybody because we have challenges with rare earth materials and what can be done. And then I go into moon mining. On Earth, every formula, we've got hundreds of them. Every formula requires 1G, 1G. It's 16G up there. None of our formulas will work. Not a single formula works. Our drill bits require atmosphere. They won't work on the moon. And to give you a big thing, one of the people involved in the project, the number one miner in the world that we have on our team, what had happened was he was asked to run NASA's program. And about 400 to 600 people, I don't remember the exact number, were in the audience. And he says, what's the first thing that every miner does? And people tossed out a bunch of things. He says, we drill holes 3,000 to 4,000 feet deep, and we create an ore body is what you do. You create an ore body picture. And you might drill 300, 500, 700 holes just for one ore body. $50 million, $100 million. So he asked them, how many holes have we drilled on the moon? Do you know how many holes we've drilled on the moon?
0.
Well, actually, we did drill one. It was 3 meters, 9 feet deep. It was about this big, and the drill broke. So this expectation, and I've been in it now for 12 years, something like that. It was sold that this was the answer for tomorrow's solutions for humanity. And here's another one of those think inside the box, think outside the box. I dropped rock. 22,000 ton of stone a day was the number one supplier to New York City. We had 12 to 24 scows, 1,000 ton each, and 250 vehicles, normally big semis, going down the road. That was a day. So it's not a mine, it's a quarry. A mine does a massive amount. So our project, that's one piece of it. Our project is to leverage the innovations that have come that we don't think about and accelerate how humans both paradigm shift and innovate. Now, here's something to think about. It's in the video that we've got. How many innovations have we created in space? How many? Have you ever thought about it? Wild guess. How many innovations?
You hear space age technology quite often, so I would imagine quite a few. That in order to get to space and operate there, we've created a lot of innovations, really.
Yeah, we do them all on Earth. We don't
Oh, I see what you're saying. Created in space.
We innovate on Earth, and the majority of those innovations never make it beyond Earth. Scratch-resistant lenses for glasses, space technology. Your running sneakers, space technology. Camera phone, you have your camera phone, that's space technology. You've got GPS, that's your technology, move food all around. When you drive your car and you're out, space technology. Cordless headsets are space technology.
Yeah.
Our lives, our laptops are cooler because of space technology. Our lives are dominated by innovations that were developed in the pursuit of space. Why? Goes back to our beginning. When you ask different questions, you get different answers. The smartest person in the room is the person who asks the best questions of themselves and of others. But when we ask questions on Earth, we have one framework. And if I said to you right now, I've got to fix my roof, you go, oh, you could do this. You're maybe not a roofer. I am. But if I said you have to do it on the moon, you'd say, how cold is it? Minus 133 C. How hot? 1 plus 122. And it changes in day. Wow. How far away is that? 200, how many thousand miles? Extreme radiation, no water, no air. How do we get things there? You ask brand new questions. So in the pursuit of a box with a roof and a door on the moon, we were named by NASA Project Moon Hut, a box with a roof and a door. That's a home on the moon. You have to solve for complex environments that you, inside your box, have never asked yourself. How do we feed people? How do we transport? How do we live in confined quarters? How do we make that work? What about radiation? And by asking those new questions, we fix part of the technological side, but we also address another issue or challenge. Humans change by experiences. We don't change because we tell them to. You're married, I'm assuming. Have you changed your wife?
No.
Okay, I get 2 answers. One is no, because you can't change your wife. The other one is yes, which means that they got a divorce and they've got a new one. Or it goes the other way too. That's always the answers. It's yes and no. People change by experiences. So when they broke the 4-minute mile, people said, I didn't know it was biologically and psychologically possible to break the 4-minute mile. Immediately after that, things changed. When we did the Watson and Crick, did the DNA sequencing, didn't know that was possible, that could happen. If we do something that humanity has always attempted or hasn't addressed, we change. So I can guarantee you, when we get a box of the roof and door on the moon and we have the most in-depth and detailed plans by the former liaison from the U.S. Space Force to the Congress, said no one in the world has it. Many people have said that. You're going to have someone sitting. You might be the one with your children there, and you'll be drinking your cup of coffee, and you'll say, we did it. You're not a space person. You don't have to be. I'm not. We got a box of the roof and the door on the moon. Oh, that's incredible. And then you look at your children and say, if we could get a box to the roof and a door on the moon, you can get your homework done.
Right. You also mentioned that people get really excited about space, but there's also a lot of opportunity underwater. And how many do you think some of those innovations would translate to that? Like a lot of the earth is covered by water. There's probably a lot of untapped resources below the surface of the water, but nobody's super excited about going underwater, but they're super excited about space.
If we were to use the paradigm that you had in the beginning, like what success would be, you wouldn't ask this question. But here's the question you could be asking. David, why the moon instead of the bottom of the Marianas Trench? So I'll answer that question. Humans have a tendency to look up, not to look down. Besides, going to the bottom of the Marianas Trench would be more difficult than actually going to the moon, potentially because of the pressure and everything that's involved. But if you were to then analyze the psychology of the 8 billion people on this planet, there is a large group of people who knew celestial bodies, are interested in going to conferences. You have a marketplace of individuals who are willing to work in that space. So why the moon? Because the moon paradigm shifts individuals and creates the innovations. My desired outcome has nothing to do with the moon. I'm not a moon person. We've come up with the most in-depth and detailed plans and the other work that we're engaged in, but you can get people involved. And I'll give you an example of just one of our teammates. His name is Adam, and he is an intellectual property attorney. He doesn't work on anything space-related, but he's a space guy. So he's involved in the project doing intellectual property. We have 23 firms around the world doing office actions. You've ever gotten a message from Amazon that says your package has arrived? Kyle worked at Amazon getting for a job interview, and he heard something happen. He said, I could build something like that. He ended up building the internal text messaging system for all of Amazon. And then one day he said, you could send this to customers too. Your message from Amazon that says your package has arrived came from him. He's not a space guy, but he loves the idea of improving life on Earth, and he's on our project. So again, he's working for something else. So for us, the ecosystem of individuals who want to build and create, it's perfect. And it hits what I've labeled years ago. I came up with this acronym. Not a big acronym guy. I don't like them, but it worked for me. AIMED. Humanity changes or things happen when something is aimed. It's aspirational. That's our stretch. It's inspirational. Wow, that would be amazing. It's motivational. I want to be involved with it. It's educational. Along the way, I've got to learn something. And it's directional. Box to the roof and a door on the moon. So the
Right.
project is aimed. And that aimed gets individuals to be stoked. So to answer that question that you were asking in the beginning, which is box to the roof and a door, moon and asteroid mining.
Yeah.
People are upset that we're not doing the mining. I'm saying, you learn something new, you change your plan.
Yeah, because you're going to have to determine. You mentioned you're working on materials that can withstand 160,000 degrees Celsius or
1600 degrees Celsius.
1600 degrees Celsius, and like Mach 8 capability versus the current Mach 5 limits.
Yeah, currently for a material breaks apart at 800 C. That's the number that they use that I've heard. I'm not a materials expert in that category. And to go to approximately Mach 10, you would need material that could go to 1600 degrees. And so we just filed on all of this, potentially have a material that would be able to reach that type of temperature. Now, why is that important to us? Because in order to do protection on the moon, to be able to change the weight of materials that we have, it's very costly to go to the moon. There's a bunch of variables, and we're looking for answers to solve, or we address, adapt, or evolve. In order to do that, we're looking at new materials. And we have two others in the pipeline. One of them is dealing with energy, electricity, and the power loss consumption. So just imagine this. If we could save 6% of the energy loss that goes through our wires and our cables all over the world, if we could save that transmission, we'd have enough energy to power all of our data centers that we want. So
Right.
what if it's just a matter of a new material? In the pursuit of improving life on Earth for all species, we're not about humans. We're about all species. And by the way, 99.9% of all species on this planet have gone extinct. 9.9. Because we're only 300,000 years old. Dinosaurs were about 160 million years. We're a drop in the bucket of evolutionary time. If we're about making that ecosystem on our world, hopefully, and I don't have the answers, I'm just a guy trying, we believe that we can reshape the future. Because there's no such word as better in this case, but different. so that our children and our children's children have, it could be cleaner oceans,
Yeah.
it could be air that they could breathe, but it could be less conflict. There's all sorts of variables that tie into the work that we're doing. We're working on a new exchange for capital markets. We're looking for 10 on a low, 47 on a high. We have a new platform we're building. That platform we've gone to market for 150 million. We've got a new biotech. We've got new in the agricultural space that we're filing right now that we're building. We need about 10 million. And we've got a bunch of projects that are, and here's the thing, they're all interconnected. They're all entangled because if we were to look into the future, if the world gets too hot around the core, goes up 1 degree C, well, we're going to have agricultural issues. What if we could replace 6% of all agriculture in the world? What if we can create new materials that are more reflective or more sustainable? It changed it. What if we can clean our oceans? What if we could change? So we tend to be more of a second order solution, not a primary. So let me give you an example. If I fed the children, that's first order. Second order is giving the agriculture so that they can take care of themselves.
Yeah.
So we build the rails that society can build on top of. And we don't want to dominate. We want alliances that come in and say, can you help us? So KPMG, Deloitte, PwC, and EY, they evaluated our business for 3 months to see if we were structurally legal. We've never done anything like this. And the guy from Deloitte on our last call, 3 months, he said, I've been here for 21 years. This is the most exciting project that's ever walked through our doors, as far as he knows. So we bring on individuals in all different categories, and they help us in ways that are amazing.
Talking about your governance models, economics models, like it's a big claim. Explain what you're seeing there. Like, because the governance models on what you're building, materials that can hit 600 degrees, and the way you're structuring the profit, nonprofit business, like, how do you get them to approve that? What was that process like?
Okay, so in redefining the tool you'll read and learn about, you actually asked multiple questions there. You asked about governance, you asked about governance models, you asked about how we're structured, you asked about new materials. As a guest, I can choose the one that I want to answer.
Sure.
If you learn to ask the question the way you learn in that tool, you'll actually be able to ask a more precise question. So I'll try to answer what I think you're asking. And I think the first one we have to start with is governance. There are different models of governance in the world today. If I was to ask you to name as many governance models as you can name, try right now. How many can you name? I'll start democracy. Give me some others.
Gap accounting.
No, the governance, like democracy, socialism, those type of things.
Oh, yeah, like maybe 5.
Name a few. Try.
Socialism, capitalism, democracy in the same family, separation of church and state.
Fascism, dictatorship. The average person can't get over 7. So imagine a plumber arrives up to your home today and they have to fix a pipe that's burst. And he shows up with a hammer, a screwdriver, and a saw. Would you be looking outside to see if he brought his van or her van?
Of course. Yeah.
Like, how do you do that? Why does a plumber drive up with a van?
So he's ready for anything.
Ready for anything. And he's going to do this, or she's going to say, I've got the perfect tool. I've only used it once. But it applies.
Right.
When you have a limited number, think inside the box, of capabilities. We've identified 290 different solutions. Now, people say that's too much. No. What it means is for different people, if I'm going to run a back office, you would run your back office different than your front office, different than maybe customer facing. If you have more tools, you can make aggregations, you can make synthesis of them to new models. So we're using governance as a mechanism for change. So that's one of those answers that you're looking at. When you say the new materials side, that is an offshoot of just innovation. We found that a lot of the challenges that are out there have to do with how light, how strong, how fast, all of those. And we ran into individuals who said, I've got ideas. Maybe I can help. And we run into dead ends. That's okay. I've run into many dead ends. If you're in leadership, all day long things are going wrong. You just accept them. It's just part of the day. This call didn't make it, the person didn't show up, that didn't work, this didn't work. It's part of the day. But sometimes you find one that's a gem. And so we started looking at new materials. Now, how does that fit to changing the future? Is if you're looking at changing the environment in the world that you're in, you're going to have several variables that you're going to want to address. And one of them is how we live, work, and play together. Now, we're not going to dictate the terms because I have people who argue these points all the time. Democracy. We want democracy. So I'll do this with you. And you've probably gotten close to saying something like that. Do you have democracy in your home? 100% democracy. Everybody gets one vote, one choice on everything you do. No, of course not. It'd be ridiculous. Okay, so you don't have democracy in your home. You own a business. Do you have democracy in your business? Everybody, one vote? No. in your community, for your school? Does everybody have one vote, no matter what age? No.
No.
So we have a representative democracy. We have different forms of democracy. We have some places is more dictatorial, but we don't say it. Maybe your home is a monarchy or a dictatorship or a patriarchy.
Sure.
Yeah, there you go. See, I saw the smile come. Our tool, our Project Moonhut, is to say we have to reshape how we look at the world. So we have this term called MIRTH, Moon and Earth. It took us 18 months to secure that patent for a French company. Has something that wasn't even close, but they argued with us in Europe for 18 months. We have a new construct. We say we live on Earth, but without the moon, there is no Earth. So I won't go into details. It's on our website. If we have a new language that determines new questions. And so what we're doing is putting in place really interesting ways of looking at the future. And so far, when people hear about it, they get excited. And that redefines how we move people forward. I don't know if I answered the questions.
I love the focus on language. That's an aside. I also want to get into the builder mindset that you talk about. But I love the stress on language because our language drives our physiology. It's just as important as our location, like where we're sitting. If we're sitting in a hot place versus a cold place, we're going to feel different. So I love the stress on language. An articulate man is a dangerous man is a saying that we use around my house. I have a bunch of boys. And language is really important. I'll give it an example. My 11-year-old, he started to say, I'm confused. And really, he's just trying to figure stuff out. But he'll go to this, I'm confused. And I find that he's like doing confusion. It's almost like a chosen state. So we've asked him to pivot to like, I'm curious rather than I'm confused. Just, I'm curious. I'm trying to figure this out. And just that shift has lowered anxiety when approached with new problems. And so just the power of grabbing a hold of something he had started to habitually say and transitioning that to, okay, next time, you're not going to say you're confused. And there's still an ongoing correction process. You're curious. Just made a tremendous difference. And you seem to believe that language is really important. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit more about that.
Let me walk you through a few things very quickly. Would you rather be pushed by a magnet or pulled by a magnet?
Pushed.
Who cares? Does the same thing. But biologically, you felt something. Psychologically, one of them has a preference. Everybody has a preference. It's not the magnet that makes a difference. It's that words move people. And you were moved by one word over another. It didn't make a difference which one it was. And we have scales the way we look at the world. If I was going to give you directions someplace, would you rather have maps drawn out, like the old-fashioned map given to you, or the words outlined for it? Now, if we had a scale of 0, this is maps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You had to pick where you are on that spectrum, a preference for what you'd like. Would you rather have a map or words to get someplace?
Map.
Map. So what number are you?
I'd probably be like on a continuum, like a 4 on the map side.
Okay, there are some people you give them a map, they're completely lost. And some people you give words. However, you say a map for that, but if I was going to give you cooking a recipe, you would probably not want it all in pictures. You'd want a recipe list that you could follow and read.
Sure.
Preference of how we interpret information. So I'm very big on picking the types of words or spending time thinking, what is that best word? And I'm going to give you an example that might help you. There are 3 words in the English language, and I'm using the English language because in other languages, there are different words. And I'll give a story to conclude this. Problem. When you hear the word problem, I have a problem. What happens to you mentally? If I said, I've got a problem.
I probably want to hear more about your problem, but I think of myself here and you there with your problem.
And you're also in the back of your mind saying, I've got my own. I'm gonna figure out which one here I like.
Sure.
If I called you up and said, I've got an opportunity for you, what would you do?
I probably want to hear how great the opportunity was. I'd be curious.
You're a little skeptical. I heard a lot of opportunities in my life. I'm not sure if this is one. But if I said to you, I have a challenge, what happens?
I'm curious. I'm ready to help.
You're ready to move in. So I get rid of the word problem. It's only used infrequently. But if you frame everything in the word challenge, you'll get more engagement just by changing one freaking word. Now, I quasi-speak Spanish. I was in Cartagena, Colombia, speaking to about 1,000 people. During the presentation, I was speaking in English. They don't speak Spanish. They don't speak as much English there. And everything's being translated, so that's an issue. And we get halfway through my presentation, 1,000 people. It's not a small audience, maybe 1,500, but I'd say 1,000. And at one point, the hands go up and they're yelling, stop, the machine broke. So I stood there in front of an audience of 1,000 people and I said, no problem, I'll speak to you in Spanish. The whole place started clapping. They were like, wow. I didn't realize this guy could speak Spanish. I spoke for 10 minutes, probably screwed up everything. And I got to a point where I said, I'm going to change back to English because there's a difference between soy caliente and tengo calor. Soy caliente means, in idiomatic expression, means I'm horny. Tango calor means I'm hot. I said to them, I want to change because I didn't want to make a mistake so that they can understand me as best as possible through the translator. So if you're conscious of the language you use, you can move mountains.
Yeah, I really believe that. I believe that, and we're seeing it, like we're seeing it play out in our parenting. My whole family's been through some Christian personal development content together. And so now we have this common language around the table. Like we talk about victim versus responsible. So we recognize when any of us, and the kids have called me out too, when I'm going victim, right? That's a language that we have. Hey, I think you're approaching that like a victim rather than how could you take responsibility for that? There's some language that we have, some common themes now.
It's huge. When I landed in Hong Kong, I heard this word and I didn't know what it meant. So one day I went to the people and said, they say guy. I said, it means please and thank you at the same time. And I said, well, can I, and I said, can I, guy? And I went, no, guy, no. And I was there every day. I'd walk up to them. Guy, no. No, it took several months. And one day I walk up and I say, guy. And the guy goes, you said it. You said it. He was so happy. And then I went, guy. He went, oh, no. And then I got to the point where I could say it, but I then learned that you say it when you're asked for something. Guy, I want a cup of coffee. Guy, and it's also thank you. Westerners learn only one part of it. They don't realize it is a double thing to use properly. You actually have to use it in both places. And I remember handing my passport. You hand two hands to the security at the, not TSA, but at the airport. And I went, guy, I handed it to him, guy, and he went, geez, you say it better than I do, and I was born here.
That's funny.
But what it did is when I said that to individuals who are Hong Kongese or in the South, they respected me. They felt there was a warmth. So using language as a mechanism for connection, unbelievably powerful. And
I love
we're not
that.
taught that. We're not taught the value of the word. And I'm not an English major. I didn't study things. I found that it makes a difference in connection. And I like connection.
Yeah, one of my favorite discussions we've had as a company, because we have South American developers, India-based folks. We started to talk about a juggery, I think is the Indian name.
Jugaad?
Yeah, jugaad. It's like a hack.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a hack and so we started talking about the quality, that there's a quality inference in when we talk about a hack in the US, it's still a pretty good thing, right? Like it's a shortcut or a more efficient way. And so we started talking about that in Brazil, it's like a juggery. It's like and I don't know if this is politically correct, but there's like a jerry rig is a term that we use in the US, where it's a less quality solution it's more temporary in its inference. And just the conversation about those nuance, that like, hey, we can, in software we call it a kludge, where it's not a very good solution, it's just getting us by.
Jugaad it's Jugaad. Jugaad.
That's right.
Jugaad is a very interesting word. It is what you'll find throughout India. It is the fixing of something in ways because they don't have the resources. So if you're driving a car and you ran out of lights, you strap on a big light on the front. Or
That's
the
right.
door's
That's
not
right.
working, you fix it. And it's a really interesting word. Now, to add to that, in the book that I sent to you, there are a bunch of those words from worldwide. They have different types of meaning, and they're fantastic. But words change people. Now that you have a new word, now I understand how you're coming at that. And if you are inquisitive enough, you'll find out how they mean it like you did. And that changes your life, because the next time you talk with somebody, you say, did you use your God? You know about that?
Yeah, exactly.
And it
that's
creates a
happened.
connection of human nature, because now you're talking, I see you.
Right. That's why we had that discussion, because we wanted to understand the inference of quality creative solutions from the standpoint of our different cultures. Because an American would say, okay, can you just hack that? They're not saying, just like
Very
clinch it up, and it's very different.
different.
It barely has to work when our Indian folks were hearing that. But to the Americans saying it, no, it needs to be a high quality creative solution,
Very.
not something that just barely works.
I've worked in Bangladesh and all those countries. See, the challenge is it has to work for them because it could be survival, but the economics might not work. So to call something Jugad might mean life and death because that machine has to operate and you figure it out. But the definition of hack to a hacker or a North American programmer is very much about it's got to be workable, but you're fixing something in a certain way. They're still similar, but they're different. And
Yeah.
it creates that connectedness between people, which is amazing.
So I wanted to talk about the builder mindset because I thought in our pre-call that was really powerful. And so you talk about builders a lot, people who quietly build rather than seeking to be influencers. And in your view, what separates builders from everyone else? And I've also seen in our household, we have this idea of, we talk a lot about consumers versus creators. I get on my kids all the time for, are we just going to consume or are we going to create? And I love that because everybody's so interested in influencing. But what drives me crazy is the trends. So we see influencing, but then they all just copy the same trends, or many of them copy the same trends. And this bothers me that I'm not really seeing unique content. I'm seeing copied themes.
Or worse, people are taking some form of a ChatGPT or Gemini or Anthropic or whatever, and they're saying, what Discord problems are being shared more often than others? Can you give me 10 different answers to those questions so that I can answer those questions to get traffic, whatever? But they don't know what it means.
Right.
So there are constructs to go with this. I think I shared this a little bit earlier, but 3 ways that the world has operated. 1, religion, whatever that may be, the witch doctor, all the way through up to religion today. Witch government is often tied. While we don't say that they are, in the United States, on our dollar, it says, "In God we trust." Come on. There's a religious component to our approach to judicial system, economic policy, the way things are run. You can do that around the world. I'm not saying there's a better or worse way. Again, I lived in Asia. I've lived in Europe. I've worked all over. So I'm not saying there's a bad or a good one. It's that there are 3. The third one is economics. So if you wanted to build or create something in the past, especially big things, you would either look for religious, that was the Crusades, or you looked for the governance. The government wanted to make that change, a big dam or a model, or you have this other part, which is economics, which drives. The challenge is they're all fracturing under the weight of the things that we have today. Independence, in the year 2000, a lot of independence in the human nature had changed. What I mean by that is prior to 2000, we had a lot more about corporate. You work for a company and that was a pride. But then they had the collapse, the year Y2K collapse, and that collapse that happened with that. Then Facebook comes up and LinkedIn. Facebook and LinkedIn are about the individual. They're not about the corporation or the entity that you work for or the organization that you work for. It's about the individual. And for the past 20 years, we focused on my CV, my background, my history, my records, my recordings, so we became very much singular focused. If you look at governments, there are 195, 200 different countries and territories around the world. They're constantly evolving. Democratic nations are changing. We're watching Iran go through the challenges that they're going through, but we're also looking at the DRC that has, and I'm not picking on them, I'm just doing this for visual, is they have 255,000 people in slavery for cobalt and mining type applications. We use them. We're using it right now just to be able to have our camera operate and all the technology in between. So it's very challenging governance to be able to articulate, and they're breaking. So if you wanted to change or influence the future in a positive way, there's one thing I've been able to identify across every country, everywhere. Doesn't matter race, religion, creed, culture, doesn't matter. In every country, there are builders. There are people who get up in the morning and they want to build something, make something, create something, build a company, build an entity, build an NGO, build a corporation. They want to build. And they are the type of people, and you might be one of them, that they get up and they have a choice of going left or going right. And they always go left. Because left is where the work is. And it's where they could build something. And building is relative. So I might want to do construction. I might want to make crafts. I might want to build a software application, but they're builders. We focus on, and on our website, you'll see there's many different types of builder. We call them the builder stack. If you participate in the other three, you have a lot of challenges. Where do we stand? Who's important? Who's not? Then what's your political position? People will say to me, you work with China. And I'll say, if you're asking me if I'll work with Xi, that's one question. If you're asking me if I'll work with Chinese people, absolutely. I know a lot of
Right.
amazing Chinese people. Will you work with Russians? Are you asking me if I'm working with Putin? That's a question. Or are you asking me if I'll work with Russians? My grandfather was Belarusian Russian. So I'm partially Russian. I wouldn't be able to work with myself. And they're brilliant people to work with. Across the world, there are people who are amazing everywhere. And so
Right.
our focus, what we'd like to see with Project Luna, and we've attracted them, are individuals who want to create, build, make something happen. They're not there for their CV in the same sense that all I want to do is make money. And we've had a few of them. And they end up not doing the work compared to the builder, because the builder hangs up and says, how do I get that done by such and such? But the person who is there for the other's reasons don't participate the same. And so we
Right.
focus on what we call the builder stack. There's philanthropic builders, there's economic builders, there's just a bunch of them. You can look on the site. And we look for them. And I think it's an interesting, I don't forecast the future like a futurist, but I can see things happening. I see there's an underlying frustration and the builders want to build. So now imagine this, working on a platform for this. Imagine right now you went to search for a builder. You go to LinkedIn, maybe Crunchbase, maybe you go to Discord, you connect to a certain person, and it tends to be more centrality around your location going out. I know that because even though I've worked around the world, my answers are based upon the geography in which I am. But what if the best person in the world to work with in the entire world is out of Cambodia, or they're out of Lagos, or they're out of the Bahamas, or they're out of Argentina? What happens when they meet is they learn common language, they learn similarities, and they learn to grow together. And so our
Yeah.
project wants those individuals to connect, because I believe I see a network of individuals who start transforming the world because they've been connected to other people who are like them, who are not out for fame and fortune. I always tell people, I don't care if my name is never mentioned after I die. I don't care. I don't need to have my name on a marquee. I don't want any of those things. But these individuals can build together. And when we find builders, it's incredible. And we have some
No, it's awesome.
amazing builders with us. I don't know if I answered the question.
No, it's great. I think it's a great word for describing a characteristic of where the mission is more important than the recognition, where the mission's more important than the parts, or my contribution to the mission. And yeah, I love that idea and I identify with that.
So to help, because I just pulled it up, there's legacy builders. Those are the philanthropic of those type. There's capital builders. There's career builders. There's frontier builders, economy builders, experience builders, industry builders, and strategic framework builders. And
Cool.
those are the builders that you find out there. And if you read them, we do have another section that will expand all of these. It's not up yet, but we'll have that up soon. But you can go to, it's on our homepage. It'll eventually move, but that's the builder stack.
Yeah, love it. It dovetails into, I've seen it called like contribution, like people are growth minded. It's like another layer where this kind of happens as you mature too, as a professional or as a person, where when you're in your 20s, you're trying to just make it work, right? Figure out how am I going to succeed at life, take care of myself, pay off my student loans, that kind of thing. When you're 30s, you're busy building a family. And at some point, though, you go, hey, how am I contributing? How do I fit? I love thinking of like that contribution in terms of building and legacy. Since you got really connected with legacy, I see legacy as the things you put in motion while you're alive that continue when you pass. Not necessarily all about financial wealth.
It's not.
But legacy is just, hey, when I'm here, I'm going to put some things in motion that are going to continue after I leave.
Now, you used age and timelines that are very Western, work around the world. So I don't know if the numbers are not completely clear, but it's between 50 to 70% of the world's population lives under €9 or 10 US dollars a day. That's a lot of people. It's about 5 billion people. Then I don't know the exact number, but you could do the math. They don't have that same trajectory. You have to be very careful. They might want to come in, going back to our original, they might say, I just want to make a difference because my village, we got all sick and the elders died and we really need to change something. And they're building because they lost a child, they lost their parents in a matter of X amount of time due to a disease or something else. And I want to find the cure for that, or I want to find the stopping of that, or I want to change that. So I would argue that it's not part of the Maslow's pyramid of getting to a point that you get there. I would more say, if we were going to be a little bit clearer about a builder is somebody who says, I need to make some. And make is not a tangible thing. It doesn't have to be a mouse or whatever. They want to
Right.
make something. It could be a model, an article, a painting.
It's an outcome of some sort. Yeah.
And I'm going to guarantee you, with the size of your organization, you have run into people who are faux, pretend builders. And then you find that out 6 months later and you're like, wait a moment. And can I give you a tip, one that I used, but I forgot, a little trick or understanding?
Sure.
Because you have an international group, and this might help. They're speaking, and then when people are speaking internationally, they do two things. They either speak louder or they speak more slowly. That's how they speak to people. No, speaking international is what I've called it, is speaking differently. And how you do that is, if someone can understand your language, you repeat yourself without them knowing it. So I knew or believe that your audience will come from multiple markets. So I just said, I used 2 words, and I don't remember the exact words, but if I was to say the stars are in a row, they're in alignment. I repeat myself. For the people who don't understand the language in that context, stars are in alignment is very difficult, but in a row they'd understand. So if you read what I write or you see when I speak, I typically am speaking international. I'm speaking for someone who won't understand that context based upon the way it would have been taken up.
Sure.
And you won't even see, if that's your native language, you don't even hear it. That might be useful to you. Just repeat yourself. No one else around you notices it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a great thought. To close here, I have 2 questions. If people and this is gonna seem scripted, but how would you like people to connect with you?
Oh.
But specifically, who do you like to connect with most?
Connecting with me, I'm out there. It's David at davidgoldsmith.com. I don't mind where you connect. It could be on LinkedIn. It could be on Facebook. It could be on any platform. I'm online. You can connect in that way. You can go to Goldsmith Organization. Right now we're having an Azure issue with davidgoldsmith.com. Don't know what's going on. We're trying to figure it out. It says that it's a threatening site. It's not. It's just our date is off. So you can go to David at davidgoldsmith.com and send. You can go to David Goldsmith. There's a form. You can go to projectmoonhut.org and contact us there. Those are the ways. Now, the type of person, that is such a loaded question. I'm going to use a phrase you have to kiss off in a lot of frogs to find a prince. I have kept track of certain networks that I've created. I meet a person, then I meet a person, then I meet a person. And that's the person who becomes the amazing one.
Mhm.
I'm willing to explore that connection. And I'll give you one very quickly. A guy asked me to go to New York City to hear a speaker. I heard the speaker ask some questions, and I ended up sitting next to him at a conference. His name was Ed Barbaro. And I got around really well during the conversation. He stood up, he said, everybody, you got to invite people like David. Now, I was 6 hours away. You got to invite people like David. He ended up teaching a class at NYU, New Product and Service Development. He said, would you come to my class? 6 hours away. I said, sure. I ended up going to the first class. He ended up having me starting to teach. I ended up teaching for the first 4 classes, and then I couldn't come anymore. Go to the class. When he was retiring 2 years later, they said, who should teach this class? And they said, the person who should teach this class is David Goldsmith. So where does he live? Lives up in Syracuse. Oh my God, Syracuse. So she calls me. She says, the guy says the only person to teach the class is David. And I said, well, how much do you pay? And she told me, and I said, I will lose $800 every class I teach. She said, I see, I told him you wouldn't do it. I said, I'll do it. She said, you'll do it? I'll say, it's NYU. I have an opportunity to teach at NYU. Let me see what it's like. I ended up my first class. I had 18 students from 17 countries. Amazing class. I'm still in touch with, actually, one of those students I spoke with this week. I taught for 12 years, won Professor of the Year for my department, ended up teaching 2 classes. One of the people in that class was a guy who introduced me to his brother, whose company ended up, Paulson & Company, shorting the market. He ended up coming on and helping us structure our organization. But in that whole pursuit, he said, you should go to this event. I went to an event. There was a guy there who was Russian, who heard about my book. He heard me speaking to somebody, said, send me the book, send it digital. I sent it to him. Met a person in Palo Alto, California, part of the Draper family. He said David should be the keynote at the event. She invited me to that event. I spoke, and the guy next to me was from NASA and said, if you ever need a tour of NASA, give me a call. And that's where Project Moonhut started.
That's cool.
My point is, and there's a lot more to that story, my point is there's a network effect of everything. So I'm interested to talk to people. I would try to give it as much attention as possible. I'm looking for people who want to build. I would suggest if you want to really talk, go to projectmoonhut.org, and there's a video, which you could put on the link or whatever on there, the 2025 video. Watch that. If it meets somebody, then we're moving and we can find a place that makes things happen. Hopefully it gave you enough that you need it.
No, that's awesome. And we're going to get your links to your book, Paid to Think, your TED Talks, Project Moonhunt. We'll throw your LinkedIn address in there.
I'll give you chapters of the book like we talked about for the redefining. I'll give you that other one on how to ask the questions. I'll give you a bunch of those and we can have all the links so that people can move forward.
Thank you. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate your time. Certainly the most time I've ever spent and enjoyed with a guest. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You've given me a lot to think about. I'll be thinking about this episode and how to think different, the language I use, all the things. I'm not just excited to read your book. I want to internalize it. So about once a quarter, I pick a book that I want to make it part of me. Some of those books was the Leadership and Self-Deception. The One Thing has been a big book for me. Atomic Habits. Like, just these are like books that I just don't want to like audiobook them and be done. I audiobook them and I read them and I highlight them because I want to try to internalize them.
Can I help you? Can I help you how to read?
Please. Yeah.
I'll give a suggestion, but I'll tell where it comes from. I ask for people to read the forward, the intro, and the first 2 chapters. If you don't like it, give it away, delete it, burn it. It's good for holding windows open. It's a dense book. What I suggest is doing that because of something that happened. I sent the book to the indexer, the guy who looks in the back and puts all the words together. It's actually an art and a science. You don't put every word of the same type. And when I sent it to him, he said, David, no one will read a 700-page book today. And I said, they did read Harry Potter. If it's a well-written book, they'd read it. And he says, David, everybody says their book is great. I said, I never said it was great. I said, if it's a well-written book, they'll read it. Do me a favor, read the forward, the intro, and the first 2 chapters. And he said, David, I've read over 1,000 business books. They're all the same. I said, you're being paid. Forward, intro, first 2 chapters. I'd like to know. And he says, okay. 2 weeks later, I receive an email. David, we just secured our largest deal in our 21-year history using the concepts I've learned and paid to think. I'm telling everybody about this book. So I called him. I said, what happened? He said, I did exactly what you said. Forward, intro, and the first 2 chapters. They're the baseline. He said, then I skipped to the alliance chapter. We've been working 2 years on a deal. I learned the language that you had taught me in there. And I went into that meeting and I used that language and we secured the deal that day using that language. Now, do you know the name Jay Abraham?
Yeah.
Jay wrote the forward to the book. I did not pay him, I swear. He actually read the book 7 times. I know that because his assistant said she printed it out 7 times. There was no book. And it's
I was on a meeting with him last week.
It's 700 pages long, so it's a lot of printing. And he said that he had to read the Alliance chapter over multiple times. So by reading it, then you can skip anywhere in the book. It's designed to go straight through, but each chapter also was designed so that if in fact you didn't read it, we repeated some things so that you'd have context so you can use it. And I've had people say, I read a book a week. And I say, good luck. I had one guy do that. He said, I read a book a week. 2 weeks later, he said, I just finished the end. I did forward, intro, chapter 1 and part of chapter 2. I have 21 pages of notes, and it's been 2 weeks. It's
cool.
So hopefully you'll enjoy it.
It sounds like it will. Awesome. Thank you, David. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you inviting me on, and I'm glad I could help.
All right, cool. Thanks.